Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a spin through the biggest stories in MMA. I'm your host, Gorgeous George, and with me, as always, some of the sharpest MMA minds in the biz. Look who we got this week. Danny Segura, mi hermano from Colombia, always bringing the heat. Goes from MMA Junkie Radio out in Las Vegas. I'm in Cali. And, of course, Farah Hanoun, overseas reporter. She's based in Cairo. Cold Coffee's back. He's on the ones and twos. Shout out to him. He's a little sick. He's a little under the weather, but watch him. He's a future Emmy Award winner here when it comes to production. Let's get started. One of the sport's biggest stars, Jorge Masvidal, has signed a bout agreement to compete at UFC 287 on April 8th. Opponent, Gilbert Burns. Location, to be determined. Come on, UFC, send location. All right, let's hear your reaction to this fight booking. What can come out of this for Game Bread? This is supposed to serve as the co-main event of the evening, so more on that in the next topic. Turning to the host of Hablemos MMA for the first take, Danny, it's on you.
Yeah, this is a very important fight, and I actually made a video about this on my Spanish YouTube channel, Hablemos MMA. This is Jorge Masvidal's last real chance at a title run, and a lot of people are saying, well, how the hell does he even have a title run hopes in the first place? But hear me out. He's fighting Gilbert Burns, a guy that everybody, whether you like him or not, you have to respect, and you consider him as one of the very, very best in the world. Let's not forget, Leon Edwards is fighting Kamaru Usman in a trilogy bout in his hometown, no elevation. I mean, he's got a lot of good things going for him. Also, Kamaru Usman coming off one of the worst knockouts we've seen in 2023. If Leon Edwards wins and defends his title, it's not that crazy that Jorge Masvidal, with a win over Gilbert Burns, could earn himself a title shot, keeping in mind that the champion, Leon Edwards, has been like, yo, I got to get this one back, whether it's in the streets or the octagon. And certainly a huge fight. Masvidal, easily the biggest name, at least from the active fighters right now at 170 pounds. And it's not like we're asking for him to go on a crazy win streak, win 2-3 fights. We're just asking 15 minutes. 15 minutes from Masvidal. I know it's a tough ask still. Durinho Burns is certainly the favorite going into it. I'm going to pick Durinho Burns, and certainly, I expect them to win. But it's really not that far-fetched to think that with one fight, Jorge Masvidal can finally get a legit win in recent years, and then, have a claim for the belt, keeping in mind that, he's got a good win and he's got bad blood with the champion. So we'll see. A lot of things have to fall in place for this to happen, but don't be surprised if you see Jorge Masvidal fighting for a title in 2023. It's definitely in the possibilities, maybe not the most likely ones, but it's definitely in the cards.
Interesting take. We'll know more after the title fight, and then that leads into Masvidal Burns. Imagine if Edwards wins the trilogy, he'll be in Miami. Oops, did I let that slip? No, I'm just kidding. We did follow up with the UFC folks. That there is a rumor that it might be there, but they would not confirm. But imagine if they bring Edwards in. Ooh, a lot of heat. So that could even build up the fight even more. Next up is Goes. What do you think, man?
Well, I don't think they can even put him in the same building, man, but that would be intense. I like this fight for him, okay? But when you look at Jorge Masvidal in his career, like, nothing's easy, right? This is par for the course for him. All he does is fight top-level talent, and Gilbert is no different. Gilbert doesn't get the credit that he deserves. Burns, he can attack you from so many different angles. I think this fight's really going to come down to the scrambles. I think that's where Gilbert can kind of put fighters in bad spots. So I think Jorge has to be a smart fighter in this fight. It's a winnable fight, but it's an uphill climb, man. And the thing is, like, with Jorge Masvidal, I don't feel like it's do or die for his career, because much like Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz, he's got a lot of lives, and a lot of people like to tune in and watch him fight, and he'll always have options. But I do think it is do or die in the sense of whether we want to see him ever fight for gold again. It's kind of a must win, man. And like Danny said, there are options there. If Leon Edwards can get that win and Jorge Masvidal can get that win, then yeah, the UFC, they'll do things like that. They can talk us into it. And you know what? As upset as we get at other situations when this happens, we probably won't hate this one that much because we feel like there's unfinished business. Both fighters want it. I think we would be okay with that if it happens. But first things first, he's got to get past Burns. And that is such a tough fight, man. I don't know if he could pull it off, but you never know with Jorge Masvidal.
You got me excited, goes. I'm thinking of all the possibilities. But look, Colby Covington can't say too much. He hasn't been active. Hamzat Shamaev, he failed at his last attempt at 170. The only one that would be pissed at that is Bilal Muhammad, but he's kind of in the game. I think he would understand it. 3-piece and a soda, come on. And get this, what if they both lose? 3-piece and a soda, come on. But then Bilal Muhammad's, he's more worried about winning the title. All right, Fada, my head's spinning. How about you? What do you think of this matchup and everything that comes out of it?
Yeah, you just said it, and at Sky VZN El Daddy said it as well. If Leon and Gamebred loses, it can still happen. Exactly, that fight is still on the table. I think with Jorge, like Danny had said, he is the biggest draw at 170. I think he's a fight that a lot of people won. And I know there was this notion that Gilbert Burns was saying, like, he doesn't want to fight me, he's ducking me. Masvidal doesn't duck anyone. If you look at his resume, the 3 losses have come twice to Kamaru Usman and once to Colby Covington. It's been pretty heavy grapple affairs for the most part. Of course, Kamaru managed to knock him out in the rematch, and Gilbert was doing well on the feet in that fight before getting stopped. But for me, it's like, which Gilbert Burns are we going to get? I know Burns is eager to get another shot at gold. He came close against Kamaru. He knocked him down. He had his moment in round 1 before getting finished. But if it's the Burns that we're seeing now, the kind of the tactical Burns we saw against Stephen Thompson, the tactical Burns we saw against Neil Magny, if he makes this a grapple-heavy affair against Jorge Masvidal, I think it'll kind of hurt Jorge Masvidal's stock in the regard that we just saw him lose to Colby Covington in that fashion. Now, he's not that easy to take down. He's got some grappling. He's got some wrestling. I don't think it's necessarily a hole in his game, but he happened to go up against Covington, who's a standout wrestler. Burns has obviously got amazing jiu-jitsu. So I think for Jorge Masvidal here, he's still a big name. I don't think his career is over, so to speak. Title picture, sure. Especially that if Kamaru beats Leon Edwards, I mean, he's already lost to Kamaru twice. But I think here it depends on which Gilbert Burns we get, because I think Masvidal can have success in this fight. But if Burns wants to fight a smart fight and kind of just stifle Jorge, stack him against the cage and make this a grapple-heavy affair, like we saw what he did against Stephen Thompson, it's not going to get the crowd off of their feet, but it's also going to kind of hurt Masvidal to come off of 2 straight losses in that fashion. So I think it kind of depends on which Gilbert Burns we get. Are we going to see a stand-up war for 15 minutes? And even if Masvidal loses that, I think his stock or whatnot depends on the kind of fight we're going to see.
Yeah, good stuff from the panel there. Hey, shout out to Colby Covington, by the way. 50 tests with USADA, and he got his jacket. He's feeling pretty good. And how about Venom in the chat? Already jumping. Do you got my notes or what? That's topic number 2. We haven't even talked about Adesanya yet. Focus on topic number 1, and that way you can be involved in this discussion the way Fada involved Sky Vizen El Daddy. Hey, that weight class is super exciting. There's tons of options, but let's move on. All right, topic 2. Thanks for the spoiler, Venom. All right, speaking of UFC 287, we also have a main event deets. And just when we thought we were done seeing fighters compete for the 4th time, here we go again. Alex Pereira versus Israel Adesanya 4. No, I'm just kidding. It would be Pereira versus Adesanya 2, but they did fight 2 other times in kickboxing. That's for all you casuals. I'm clearing that up. All right, currently the odds makers have Adesanya listed as a favorite in the range of minus 155 to 210. The comeback is plus 135 to plus 180. So I'm giving you that because that was quite a disparity I saw with the different houses when these odds came up. All right, what is your early lean on this fight? And Goes, we're going to start off with you.
Early lean would be Israel Adesanya. I mean, this fight means everything for him. This is all about his legacy at middleweight right here. Because if you look at history, right, like let's take a guy like Mike Tyson, right? How destructive he was, how long he went without losing. But at the end of the day, if you bring up the name of Evander Holyfield, we stop talking about Mike Tyson, right? This is what could potentially happen to Israel Adesanya. That's what we're dealing with here. So we're not going to know until we get to that moment. But what history has shown us is Israel Adesanya in his head, I think he's going to be okay. We know he's going to be focused. We know how he treats all this stuff. He knows what's on the line. For me, it's not so much all the things that he says going into the fight. It's the actual fight. What happens? Because we all know that deep down in his mind, he knows how that fight went. He knows he has advantages that he took advantage of in that first fight, and he probably can in the second one. But guess what? Pereira's trying to get better, right, this whole time. So who knows what happens? But that second he gets cracked, if it's, oh my God, here we go again, or if it's, let's go, let's do this, we won't know. And I don't even think Israel Adesanya will know until that moment happens. But if he can go in there and get the win, I wouldn't be shocked. If he gets the loss, It's going to be heartbreaking because that guy's just going to always have his number. But at the same time, how long can a guy like Alex Pereira reign, right? Like, he doesn't really give us that vibe that bring in a wrestler, I'll take care of him. Bring in a BJJ guy, I'll take care of him. Like, he doesn't give off that vibe. The vibe he gives off is I own Israel Adesanya, not the division.
He also gives off a vibe like 205 would be a lot more fun than 185. That is a giant.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, he could get Robert Whittaker, man. 0-2 against the champ. What can you do, right? All right, Fada, you're next.
Yeah, I don't think it signifies kind of an end or anything for Adesanya if he loses to Pereira, because he's kind of wiped out the division, right? So at the end of the day, if Alex Pereira reigns as champion and stays champion and defends his title for many years, then okay, that's a different discussion that obviously is way, way too early. But I think if Adesanya loses to Pereira, he's wiped out the division. If Pereira just loses to anybody else, Adesanya will already have a win, whether he loses to Whittaker or Vettori, whoever is at the top. Adesanya pretty much has a win over the majority of the division. So I think Adesanya gets put right back in the title picture because a lot of these guys are going to want their revenge, and they're going to have the belt, and they're going to kind of be the A side in this. So for Adesanya, I think he'll be okay. In terms of an early lean, man, initially it was Adesanya for me, but I don't know. The thing that impressed me about Pereira so much is how he carried that power so late into the fight, especially that they got into those grappling exchanges, and especially that he looked pretty fatigued. And the fact that he still had that equalizer late into the fight, into round 5, it's pretty insane to me. So I don't know. I think now I'm kind of starting to sway towards Pereira. I might change my mind again before the fight, but the fact that he carried that power so late into the fight, despite being tired. And I know grappling seems to be a bit of a hole in his grappling, but Adesanya is not a grappling specialist either. So I think in that regard, he's going to be fine. But yeah, the power that he carried, the power that he carried throughout the whole fight, that's what impressed me the most. So right now, I think I'm swaying towards Pereira a little bit, just because as well he's got the mental advantage with all the wins.
All right, good stuff. Mikey in the chat says, I'll cry if Adesanya loses again. How about you, Danny? Would you feel the same?
No, I probably won't cry, but look, if we're talking about an early lean, I'm going to go with Adesanya. Yeah, he did get stopped, but prior to that, he was pretty much putting a whooping on Pereira. Now, it wasn't a bad one, but it was pretty clear that he was up on the scorecards. And, afterwards, when they revealed what the judges had judged the fight until then, I mean, it confirmed everybody's judging of the fight. I do. It's weird. I do think he is the better fighter, but you add that power factor, and all of a sudden, the equation changes a bit. We'll see what happens in terms of a result. I think if Adesanya loses, it's not career-ending, but it does put him in a very difficult situation. I don't think he's very big to go up to 205 and commit there. He could go there and have some success because he's very skilled, but I do think his body and frame is better suited for 185. The best thing that he would have going for him is just to maybe take some time off or take a couple fun fights here and there. And then, just hope that Alex Pereira either loses or goes up to 205, which that's a very, very possible option. I know you mentioned it at the beginning, George. Let's not forget, I feel like the whole Glover and Alex Pereira relationship is very similar to the Cain Velasquez and Daniel Cormier. Who knows? Maybe Pereira is kind of hurting himself a little bit in the sense of cutting a bit of extra weight to compete at 185 because his mentor, is still in the title conversation at 205. Obviously, that's no longer in place. Glover Teixeira retired. So it might just open the doors for him to go up to 205 and make that his division because he is a pretty big dude. 185 does seem like he's barely making it, although, he hasn't had any weight issues. I do wonder how much stress he puts on his body just to make that cut. So I think a lot of of what could happen with Adesanya if he loses is wait and see. But yeah, I would definitely put him in a tough situation.
All right. Jay Abraham is saying, did anyone mention the end of the first round? Adesanya had Alex on skates.
Yep.
This is true. This is true. Yeah, we all acknowledge that fight was really Izzy's for the taking. And then, like Fada explained, that equalizer, it just evens things out every single round once he gets off that stool. So credit to Alex Pereira for having that and the valuable experience he learned from it, knowing he can go into the 5th. He's really, really an inexperienced fighter. He hadn't even reached 10 fights yet, and he was already in this title fight because of the history and kickboxing. And check out Venom chiming in on Burns will destroy Masvidal. First, he was a topic ahead, and now he's a topic behind. He's like doing the running man in our chat. Keep it together, Venom. Come on, keep up with us. Kevin Turner says his career will continue regardless. So yeah, true. But Izzy likes them big fights. He likes that gold around the waist, the pearls around his neck, the bling. So he wants to stay in the title fight contention. We got to move on to the third topic. All right. So Conor McGregor was in the news again, and then he was in the news again, and then later in the week he was in the news again. So let's go in order here. First of all, McGregor is under investigation for allegedly attacking a woman on board his yacht in Ibiza, an island in the Mediterranean off the coast of Spain. This, according to a report from Spain's Mallorca Daily Bulletin. The alleged attack took place back in July. A McGregor rep has issued a denial statement on his behalf. All right, we're going to go one by one on this because this thing's all over the place, and it's the biggest sport figure in the sport. So let's go first here to Fada. What do you think? Is it too early to even opine? The stuff that's coming in, it doesn't look good. He says, the rep for McGregor says nothing to it. What say you?
Yeah, too early. Like I don't want to speak on the matter. It's allegations for now, so I think it's a little too early until we get more information then to speak about it. Obviously, I'm assuming more will come out, although it was from a year ago. But for now, I just think it's too early for me to comment or come to a conclusion. Now, obviously, it's not good for his comeback right now. The fact that he's nearing a comeback, not back in the USADA testing pool just yet, but it appears with the rumors of Ultimate Fight and all that we're going to get McGregor back. You don't want your name attached to something like that. But obviously, I'll speak out on the matter more once we find out. For now, it's allegations. Once we find out more information, then I'll be able to give a better opinion.
Yeah. How about you, Danny? Just trouble seems to follow McGregor a lot, and none of us feel like when we read it, I think say, come on, no way. He just seems to get in a lot of trouble, man. So I know it's a tough topic, but what were your thoughts when you saw this?
Yeah, definitely alarming. And it's a situation that's been alarming. As you mentioned, this is not the first time that Conor McGregor's linked to a terrible headline. And I know that Michael Bisping made a video on his YouTube channel saying hey, look, when you're that famous, people can come after you, you have money, this and that, right? But sure, Anderson Silva was also a megastar. George St. Pierre was a megastar, and you never really saw these type of headlines surrounding their name. And again, it's not like the first time it happens. It's happened multiple times. So all of this is alleged. We don't know the exact details. McGregor denies everything. The victim is obviously, putting this forward. But yeah, this is not good. And it kind of makes you wonder where all this is going to lead, because if these things start piling up, you might get lucky with one thing in the sense that it doesn't escalate to anything big, but eventually if these things keep happening, you can land yourself in a lot of trouble. So it is kind of alarming, to see is somebody kind of putting the brakes on McGregor, somebody controlling, where is his life headed? So we'll see what happens. Again, all this is alleged, but as you mentioned, when I think this headline, came about, I don't think a lot of people were, shocked that something like this could even be, imaginable with Conor McGregor. He's had a pretty extensive track record of getting in trouble. So I just hope that, he surrounds himself with the right people, that the people that are around him kind of, get him, figured out and get him sorted out, because again, this could get him into a lot of trouble. Not only that, but the people that he could be affecting around him, including this person, you never know where this can lead. So yeah, just terrible headline.
Yeah. And of course, there's an investigation going on in Dublin which is circling back to now, I guess she is bringing it forward in Spain. She says she jumped off the boat, just to avoid McGregor. And this is somebody who knows McGregor back from his hometown of Dublin, Ireland. And then I could have sworn I even read something about that young lady's car allegedly was set ablaze. This thing's nuts, goes.
Dude, it totally is. News is trickling in, and like you said, none of us are really too surprised about the situation. What I am surprised about is I just feel like he shouldn't be putting himself in any of these situations. Like Danny said, there's a record there of bad decisions, and I think he just needs to be a little bit more careful. His people around him need to be careful of where they let him go and what the things he gets to do. But it's when you look at what the situation that's going on, it's not really. It's a hit on the Conor McGregor brand, of course, but it's also a hit on the MMA brand as a whole. Like 2023 has not been kind to this sport. And this is just another thing, man. I was at dinner last night and I had some friends that are casual fans. And I wasn't answering who I thought was going to win and John Jones and Cyril Gahn. Break it down for me. It was one thing after another, man. One hit after another, controversy after another. And this definitely is not helping mixed martial arts right now.
Definitely. All right. Great job, guys. We're limited in what we can say. These are just allegations, folks, but the stories are out there. And of course, we'll follow it on MMA Junkie. Now, stuff that I guess is more down in our wheelhouse. Hey, McGregor's saying, I was offered a spot on TUF, the upcoming season of The Ultimate Fighter, and lending credence to his post on social media was UFC Dana White, the president, sharing McGregor's post. So I think this thing has some legs. So I want to ask you all, back to Fada, who would you like to see that pairing with if Connie Mack is on one side? Who do you want to see on the other side?
Tony Ferguson is my answer, and I'll say why. It's not necessarily that's the comeback fight I want for McGregor. And I remember he coached last time when he coached it was against Uriah Faber, and they didn't fight. So I don't know if it's necessarily going to go down the route of that's going to be his opponent. But the reason why I picked Tony Ferguson is because obviously there's history there. There's a lot of back and forth. The whole Paradigm thing, of course, Tony Ferguson was represented by Paradigm, which Conor partially owns. So he's upset with the way things went down. So there's a lot of history there. Is it the fight necessarily? I think Michael Chandler is better for Conor McGregor as a comeback fight in the sense that it does more for him. I know people are going to point to Tony Ferguson's losing skid and say that a win is going to not do much for Conor McGregor. He did come back against Cowboy Cerrone last time, and he is coming off a pretty gruesome injury as well. So I don't think the Tony Ferguson fight is even a bad idea. I prefer Chandler as a fight for his comeback. But in terms of filming the show, Chandler has been very respectful towards Conor, and I love Michael Chandler, and I'd love for him to get that opportunity to fight Conor. But he's kind of been very respectful towards Conor. If we're talking about ratings and entertainment and whatnot, yes, Conor brings the ratings regardless of who he coaches against, but I just think it'll be a lot more fun and wild and weird and crazy with Tony Ferguson.
You want the fireworks, don't you, Fada? You're thinking, what was it, season 10 with Rampage and Evans? That was a good one. I'm feeling what you're saying. All right, how about you, Goes? Which way are you leaning here?
Well, I mean, the timing of this is pretty hilarious, right? Like, to me, this should be called the ultimate distraction, but we're here. He's in there, right? And we're not talking about the other stuff. We're going to be talking about the Ultimate Fighter. So I think if you're going to put him in a house for that long or on a show for that long, we've heard so much of Conor McGregor saying this, Nate Diaz saying that, but at the end of the day, we didn't get the third fight, and I'm kind of tired of that. So I don't want to see that happen again because I agree. Like, I don't want to see Tony Ferguson fight Conor McGregor, but I do want to see Michael Chandler fight him. And so if we can get that payoff, I like Michael Chandler being in that house. And Michael Chandler, one of the nicest dudes on the planet, sweet guy. But George, you know as well as anyone, you pull out tic-tac-toe, and that guy is a competitor. He will get in your face. You will see a different Michael Chandler in that house. And he's fresh blood for the Ultimate Fighter, right? The time that he came around in the UFC, he's been marketed well, but I don't think people have seen his real personality. And I think it'll come out in the Ultimate Fighter. I think when Conor gets in his face, he's going to get right back in his face. And what I like about it is there would be a payoff and a fight at the end. And I think that's really important, man. Put those two together, I think you got fire.
All right, Danny, are you going to serve as the tiebreaker, and or do you have a different idea in which the Ultimate Fighter, the direction they can go?
I'll serve as a tiebreaker, but before I break the tie, I think the UFC dropped the ball here a couple of times. And I know getting these things done is difficult, but ideally, McGregor should have been doing the Ultimate Fighter with Nate Diaz to close off that trilogy. You build it up real nice. You bring back attention to the show since, it seems that Contender Series and other things are picking up a lot more importance nowadays than the Ultimate Fighter. I think that would have been option number one. Number two, you should have booked, if the Nate Diaz thing wouldn't have happened, of course, now he's a free agent. Number two, you shouldn't have booked Masvidal against Burns. I think Masvidal should have been doing the tough house with McGregor. I mean, you talk about building up a fight, a promo. those two talking for hours on a reality TV show, that would have been quite interesting to see, and you would have built up a huge fight, and who knows, maybe even launched an entire new rivalry, just like the Nate Diaz Conor McGregor one. So that's for starters. I think, you know, they dropped the ball on those two occasions. But keeping in mind that Nate Diaz is no longer an option, that Jorge Masvidal is no longer an option, and if I had to pick, I do acknowledge that Chandler and Ferguson are sort of the best two plan Cs, if you will. I think Ferguson is the move. I think, you know, with the Ultimate Fighter, you usually want to get a little bit of a rivalry going on. Chandler has been very respectful in the past. That's just who he is. I don't think he's going to try to be more than what he is, or be extra just for ratings. Ferguson, on the other hand, you don't really have to tell him to be extra. The guy will give you a show on camera, and I think it's a fun fight. Plus, there's a rivalry there, right? Let's not forget that Tony Ferguson was supposed to fight for the belt, and McGregor kind of skipped him back in the day. So, you know, there's a little bit of beef there. Plus, Tony Ferguson, man, he's been around forever. A lot of us, including myself, feel like he kind of got screwed over a little bit towards in the prime of his career in terms of title fights. You know, bad luck, injuries, also politics. So I would like to see him get a big fight. And the biggest fight you could possibly get in the sport is Conor McGregor. So I think he does deserve it and a nice payday. So I'm going to go with the option of Tony Ferguson in this one.
Can I say something here? Like, okay, I love your idea about Jorge Masvidal, but if you put those two in the vicinity of each other for 8 weeks, you're going to end up with more combos than a Jack in the Box menu, right? Those guys will fight 5 times in that house. Well, you know Jorge Masvidal. You guys know him. There's no backing down with that guy, and Conor McGregor is going to provoke him over and over. If they can make it happen, holy crap, that's ratings galore, but I don't think they can, man.
Some extra security in there goes.
A lot.
Fada, you were going to chime in?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. I mean, Ferguson's won the Ultimate Fighter as well. It'll be good to have him on there. He's obviously has the experience of being in the house, won at welterweight actually. But yeah, and he's a guy that could also fight Conor McGregor at welterweight. Seems like he's gonna stick to welterweight. So that's, I know Chandler was talking about I'll fight McGregor at welterweight, but he hasn't done that before, whereas Tony Ferguson has.
Yeah, and we've all said if McGregor were to win one fight, then I think we can all stomach him fighting for a title because we realize the pull that he has. We don't want him walking straight into a title. Could just him beating Ferguson be enough? A former interim champ? Yes, I know he's on a skid, but could the UFC sell that to the audience?
What weight class are you talking about? Sorry.
Yeah. No worries. I was going to say he's coming off of an injury. We forget about that. He's coming off a gruesome injury, so he's not I'm not necessarily calling Tony Ferguson a layup for him or whatnot, but we have to consider that we don't know what kind of McGregor we're going to get. Look at the way Anderson Silva was when he came back from that injury. Weidman's yet to come back, so it's not an easy thing to come back from an injury like that. So throwing him straight into the fire, I know people throw Dustin Poirier's name. Somebody that Jay Abraham said has to be Dustin. I don't know if you want to do that. I think, you know, we don't even know what kind of McGregor we're going to get.
But for what weight class are you talking about, George? Because I feel like there's a big difference there. Stomach a title shot at 170 or 155?
155. I just don't see how you can insert McGregor into the 170 title picture without, he'd have to beat a few guys. At 155, I think he has to beat one guy, and then maybe he can slip in there somehow. He has history there as a former champ. That is pretty much his weight class. Even when he's fought at 170, it's been against 55ers. They just didn't want to suffer the weight cut. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking of.
I think honestly a win over Chandler would get him closer to that. I mean, I think a win over Chandler right now in 2023 is more valuable than a win over Ferguson. But at the end of the day, if the UFC decides to throw McGregor in a title fight, I don't think a ton of people, especially as the day gets closer, would complain, given that, you know, it would be a spectacle, it'll be huge. And, you know, it's Conor McGregor. He's kind of the exception of all rules.
As it was mentioned earlier, he didn't fight Faber. So could he just coach against Poirier and them not fight? Or if the thing really, really brews over, maybe Poirier says, all right, well, I'm up 2-1, but let's do this.
I don't think it makes sense. I don't think a fourth fight, especially, you know, back-to-back defeats, and we saw how those were going. Like, I think it's pretty clear who the better fighter is. And that's usually what we're trying to find out in fights, right? I think it's pretty clear that answer is Dustin Poirier. Personally, I know some people have suggested it, but I wouldn't like to see Poirier in there. I think Poirier is still gunning for a title shot. Would like to see him pick up a win over. I know he's coming off a win over Chandler, but another top contender and see where he's at. Maybe it's in his cards that he one day will be undisputed champion. I don't want to discard that option just yet.
Hey, this isn't on the script, guys, but forget about the bike. All right, you fell off the bike. Get better. That wasn't even that big of a deal. So I'm just going to eliminate that. What if Alexander Volkanovski beats Makhachev? Makhachev doesn't get an immediate rematch, right? So this opened things up for Poirier, Chandler, McGregor, one of those popular guys that sells to slip in there. Let's go in an order here, Fada.
Yeah, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, Poirier has also become one of the bigger draws at 155 pounds. So in terms of McGregor, everyone wants to fight McGregor, right? So it wouldn't surprise me if Islam Makhachev even said, "Bring me Conor McGregor." He's going to look at him as an easy win, big payday. So I think in regards to Conor specifically, everyone's going to want to fight Conor McGregor. As soon as Conor McGregor comes back, if he just notches one win, everyone's going to be calling his name. But even Dustin Poirier is a lucrative fight at 155 pounds. So if we're talking about Poirier and title picture, Volkanovski beats Islam Makhachev, and obviously he's going to have to defend that title. I don't assume he's going to vacate it, but Poirier is another guy that could just jump straight back into the title picture because Poirier is a lucrative name. And I know people are going to say because he got that from beating McGregor twice. Regardless, the guy is one of the most entertaining fighters on the roster. He's one of the biggest names in the sport, and he is one of the most lucrative fights at 155 pounds. So Poirier is a guy that a lot of lightweights call for as well. So yeah, Volkanovski coming or becoming champion is going to shake things up. But also, Poirier hasn't fought Islam Makhachev either. So Islam could want that Poirier fight too. Who knows?
Man, imagine Makhachev versus Conor coaching. My head's spinning. Goes, you have anything to close out?
Dude, why do you have to open up this can of worms, man?
Well, it's only a few weeks away. We're talking about how London could impact Burns versus Masvidal. It seems so way in the future where this one's just less than 2 weeks away.
Yeah. Let me throw a curveball in here. What about Max Holloway going back up to 155? Him versus Conor, tough.
Yeah, bring back that skateboard clip. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, that
maybe that'll be the coach's challenge.
Yeah, let's see. Look at that. But when that happened, Max Holloway's team was so friggin' excited, and then Conor lost. So I know Max and his team wanted. So there's history there. And listen, there's so many big fights for Conor McGregor. I think he just needs to come back and get one win, and then sky's the limit.
Mm-hmm.
Man, after hearing some content earlier this week, did Dillashaw say he hurt his shoulder playing tetherball in the coach's challenge against Garbrandt? Like, we may have to even temper down the coach's challenge, maybe bring up Goz's tic-tac-toe suggestion or something. But yeah, crazy stuff, but tons of options. Holy cow. All right. That was a good one. And we're going to move on to topic number 4 here. All right, looking ahead. So this Saturday, Fedor Emelianenko fights for the final time as he challenges Ryan Bader for the Bellator heavyweight title. The odds maker have this fight at Bader minus 250, Emelianenko plus 190. Can one of the greats leave on top even at age 46? Danny, it's back on you.
That would be quite the story, but if we're keeping it real, I would say no. And I'm actually surprised the odds makers are being a little bit lenient here. I would expect Bader to be a little bit more in the 300s range, in the minus 300s range. I really do. I think he's got a shot because Fedor obviously still has power, still somewhat explosive, and obviously the technique is still there. But Bader's just much younger, much more stronger. He can, if he really decides to wrestle, I know the first fight was a finish, but if he decides to wrestle, I don't think Fedor has anything for him there. Bader should win this. I would have liked to seen another farewell fight for Fedor, bring in Lyoto Machida, I don't know, pick up Anderson for a one-fight deal. There could have been so many more fun and adequate options that would have given Fedor a better chance to, leave with a big fight and at the same time with a good shot of leaving with a win. Instead, he gets here a title shot against Ryan Bader. Again, I know it's for the title, which is nice. It's, if he leaves as champion, which is Obviously, a great way to close out your career, but I do not like his chances. Now, I don't think this is solely Bellator's fault. I've also heard that Fedor was pretty adamant in wanting a title fight rematch against Ryan Bader on his way out rather than anything else. So, they have to kind of play with that as well. Again, I don't like his chances. I think he's gonna lose. And look, if anything we learned about the first UFC pay-per-view, usually when these legends go to share a Shogun, it's not that happy. It's usually doesn't end too well for them. So we'll see what happens. MMA is crazy, but I expect Ryan Bader to be and still.
Yeah, I'm feeling the same way. How about you guys? Can one of the greats leave on top?
Man, this is so sad for me because I mean this is kind of the end of the Pride era, right? Like Shogun and Overeem were active for a while. They kind of carried the flag, and obviously Fedor. But you'll have your guys like your Robbie Lawlers and your Nick Diaz that had a stint in Pride, but they weren't even in Japan. Like really, the true Pride era I think may come to an end here. But with Fedor, I mean, I think he's got a puncher's chance, right? We all know power's the last thing to go, but what he has to do is dictate the pace in this fight. I know he likes to sit back and wait and counter and explode, but that didn't go well for him in that first fight. And I think Ryan Bader, the longer you give him time to get comfortable in there, the worse it's going to be for you. I don't care who you are, how old you are, or what you've been through. There still has to be this thing that when you look across and you see Fedor Emelianenko looking at you with them dead eyes, part of you's got to kind of say, holy shit, that's Fedor Emelianenko. Like he has to use that to his advantage. I think he has to come out and be very aggressive in the beginning and rely on that power, and hopefully he can pull something off here. But like as Danny said, it's an uphill climb. The odds should probably still be a little bit higher, but I give Fedor a little bit of a shot.
All right, how about you, Fada? Does this guy leave on top, or is it Bader all night?
Yeah, I'm going with Ryan Bader as well. I mean, look, their first fight was a 35-second finish. We didn't really get to see much, and that's perhaps why the odds aren't. I mean, if he got dominated bell to bell for 5 rounds, then maybe the odds would look different. I think the fact that it was a super quick finish, kind of because we didn't get to see too much. Fedor is coming off back-to-back first-round finishes. I think his last 4 wins have come by knockout, but he hasn't been too active either. I don't know. It's tough. Of course, it would be incredible to see him walk out on top, because what it will do is it'll kind of, all the new MMA fans that don't know much about Fedor, just hear his name in the discussions of greatest of all time. A lot of people put him lower in the rankings just because they haven't been MMA fans for that long. I think that will make people revisit kind of his career and celebrate it if he can walk out as a champion. Leave the sport as a champion. So I think it will be incredible just for people to revisit his history and kind of appreciate what kind of fighter he was and why he's one of the greatest. But I don't know. It's just kind of tough. I am the wrestling, like Danny mentioned. And listen, Bader, when he beat Fedor, he was on a nice winning streak. He hadn't lost in Bellator yet. Now he's got a couple of losses. He is coming out back-to-back wins, but I mean within this past 5 or 6 or whatnot, he is coming a few losses. I think we might see, there's a lot to lose for Ryan Bader, in my opinion, as well, other than his belt, obviously. But I think, maybe resort to the wrestling. It'll be that kind of fight. I don't know. It'll be nice to see Fedor win, but I'm leaning Bader.
At heart, he's a wrestler. I just don't want to see Bader versus Congo in Paris. Holy cow. That was a lot of wrestling, and it really, really takes the steam out of an event. I was at the first Fedor fight, and the crowd was, I mean, you could cut the electricity, with your hand. It was intense. I really would like to see them stand. Bader did finish him that way. If they can revisit just something like that, except let the fight go out longer, I think even Fedor could stomach, losing on his shield, but getting a chance to compete. All right, I'm gonna put it on the map. Fedor's gonna wobble him with a lead hook. He's gonna have his moments, but I think Bader in the end will come through and win the fight. Bader is also 39, folks, and couple that with all the wrestling he's done, who knows, maybe he might be tapping on the door of the R word as well. But it's Bellator 290. We got great coverage here at MMA Junkie for that, with a couple of our fellow staff members. They'll be covering the event. In fact, I got Sky V's and El Daddy saying I'm going to be at the Kia Forum And then also a shout out to Fada. Marcus Teek says Fada is one of the best interviewers. She needs to be used more as an interviewer option. Fada, I believe you're going to London, right? So we'll see more of that there.
Yes, I am, and thank you, Marcus.
All right, very cool. Let's go on to no, we're not going on to the next one. Favorite memory of the Last Emperor. Let's go back, Danny.
His submission win over Kevin Randleman, and it's not only because the submission was great, but also because Kevin Randleman, a freak athlete, just jacked up, lifts Fedor in the sky and slams him straight on his neck, and Fedor just keeps that stoic, poised look at all times and manages to come back and somehow not only not get paralyzed, but actually win the fight. So that to me always stands out as a insane Fedor memory.
Dude, if that happened on concrete, you might be right. One of those bad things could have happened. Goes?
Shit, if that happens on a bed, it still hurt me, man. But for me, I think it's got to be the Andrei Arlovsky fight. The timing of that shot that he threw, the way he walked away from that. And George, you were there with me. The electricity in the crowd, right? The flags that were being waved as he walked out. That whole night was pretty amazing. But to be able to time a shot like that on Andrei Arlovsky was pretty nasty.
Affliction, Day of Reckoning. That's right. One hell of an event. 2008. All right. How about you, Fada? What's your favorite memory of Fedor Emelianenko?
Yeah, I like his finish over Gary Goodridge because it was just aggression personified. It was a lot of combinations, a lot of aggression, some soccer kicks in there. Pride 2003, I think it just gave you a bit of everything, and he just kind of rushed him, dropped him, finished him, and just kind of unleashed a barrage. Kind of just a good way if you want to show someone what Fedor used to fight like. That's a good way to show him.
Good stuff. All right. We're moving on to topic number 5. Jamahal Hill has only had the belt just a little over a week, and everyone's gunning for him, including Alex Pereira. Would a second win over Israel Adesanya be enough to make that fight happen, being that there's a connection with him avenging the loss of fellow Brazilian and his mentor, Glover Teixeira? All right, Fada, we're back to you.
Yeah, I think so. I think because we talked about this earlier about the weight cut being big for Alex Pereira, so it wouldn't be crazy if he beats Israel Adesanya that he moves up to 205. There are a lot of matchups for him where at middleweight that are tough for him, and he doesn't have too much to gain. I don't think a Marvin Vettori on his resume. No disrespect to Marvin Vettori, he's a tough fight. He's going to grapple him. It's not something that is going to be super lucrative to him. Another win over Adesanya, moves up to 205, and Jamahal Hill mentioned his name. I mean, he just beat his mentor, Glover Teixeira, who hung up his gloves. I think Jamal is going to want that fight. And if you look at the 205-pound division, a lot of talented guys, but I think for Jamahal Hill, if he's champion, that's the money fight, Alex Pereira, especially if Alex Pereira can beat Israel Adesanya a second time. People are questioning the win in terms of it being a comeback win. Adesanya was winning that fight. I definitely agree with that. So if he can beat Adesanya again, I think he is a money fight at 205 pounds, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if Jamahal Hill calls for it and Adesanya, Pereira wants it. So yeah, I could see that definitely happening.
All right, Danny, what about you? What do you think here?
In a vacuum, I do like that fight. I think if you're a fight fan, it's pretty obvious that fight paints to be a fantastic matchup. But keeping in mind that, there are other ties into this, especially divisional ties. And as far as merit, I wouldn't like to see it because both guys literally just won the belt. Neither guy has a title defense yet. And I'm not a big fan of these guys winning a title and then wanting a super fight or a champ fight. I don't like it. I like the Volkanovski route. You become champion, you defend the belt, you clean the division, you're pretty clear the number one guy there, and then you look for other challenges elsewhere since you can't find them in your own division. That's what I like to see, and that's clearly not the case here. So again, in a vacuum, I do absolutely love the fight, but there are deserving contenders at 205. There are deserving contenders at 185 pounds. So let them defend the belt, pick up some steam, and then we can talk about that, I don't know, in a year or two.
Yeah, and shout out to Valentina Shevchenko doing the same thing, just dominating a division. Still a couple people coming up, but she's done it so often that if she were to go up, I think we'd all support that. It does seem a bit too soon with some of these fighters that want to immediately look, into another direction. They have yet to defend. How about you guys?
I think it happens, but I think it happens way down the road. I think Jamal needs to win a couple. I think Pereira right now, like, he needs to crank out a few too, because his identity is just the guy that's been owning Izzy, and I don't know that that's good enough to make people say we need to see him move up. So keep in mind also Alexander Volkanovski, right, and Islam Makhachev. If Makhachev just completely wipes the floor with Volkanovski, I think that can play into the fact that people might say, well, we're getting tired of these guys moving up in weight and getting dominated the way Israel Adesanya got dominated when he went up. So there's a lot of little factors that can play into it. I think it'll happen eventually, but I don't think it'll happen anytime soon.
All right, good stuff. Goes, the next time we're with cold coffee, please stand between us, because that's the only way to stop cold coffee from probably doing what Randleman did to Fedor. He'd probably do it to me. I threw everything off here. I skipped topic number 5. He's not going to win that Emmy if I keep screwing up. So we're going to go to topic number 5 right now, and it involves Luke Rockhold. Luke Rockhold was given his release from the UFC. Pretty big news this past weekend. Would you like to see the former Strikeforce and UFC middleweight champion continue in MMA, or do you think his eyes are set on something else? All right, go.
I think his eyes are set on something else. If you look at the options that are out there, right? Like, PFL doesn't even have the division, and a schedule like that is not good for an aging veteran, so that's out. BKFC, the first thing they tell us in male modeling, the last thing you want to do is get cut up like that, right? He ain't gonna go there. So really, what's left? You got your MMA route with Bellator, and he does have a connection to Scott Coker. He's worked with them before, so you could see something like that happening. But I think that's his plan B. I think his plan A is to try and land a fight with Jake Paul. I could see him trying to lobby for that. He's already talked about it. And, I think that's probably the right move for him, make some money that way. I don't know that Bellator would be too excited about him being there. I mean, he's going to demand a high salary, that's for sure. And you don't know how long you're going to have him. So I think his plan A is fight Jake Paul. Plan B is probably maybe Bellator.
I like it. Those are some good ones. All right, Fada, next.
Yeah, I don't know about me personally wanting to see Luke Rockhold box. I think, considering how most of his recent losses have come, minus the Paulo Costa one, they've all been knockouts. He's taken a significant amount of damage. I'd rather see him stick to MMA. Bellator would be a good fit, obviously, because of his history with Strikeforce and whatnot. But I don't know about boxing, or definitely not bare knuckle boxing or any of that stuff. I don't know. I mean, he is a decent. Obviously, he's a big name in MMA. I don't know how lucrative he would be in terms for even someone like Jake Paul to box. I don't know. I think Rockhold's a very good grappler. It's a part of his game that has helped him a lot throughout his career. I'd like to see him stick to MMA, incorporate more of that. We did see him kind of get tired. I don't know if it's a motivation thing with Luke Rockhold at this point, if it's going to be the bag that motivates him. How much could Bellator pay him that would entice him to come? I don't know. But in terms of Luke Rockhold, I know I think he told the Schmo that he'd step in for Tommy Fury if he couldn't fight Jake Paul. I just don't know personally if that's something that I want to see him do. I'd rather see him in MMA where he could use his, and plus Luke Rockhold was known more for his kicks than his hands. So I don't know if I just want to see him in a sport where all he does is use his hands, considering the damage he's recently took. So I'd rather see him stick to MMA. What's the play here exactly? Probably Bellator for the time being. Who knows? But I just don't know if I want to see him box.
Okay. Yeah, he could add to the belt collection if he's a Bellator. He has worked with Scott Coker. That's a good one. Maybe even one championship. Who knows? How about you, Danny?
Bare knuckle for me, big no-no. Boxing, I'm not all that interested in watching him box Jake Paul. I do think Bellator is a very good option for him. Obviously, he's got that past history working with Scott Coker back in the Strikeforce day. I do think over at Bellator, he can have a lot of good fights. I don't know, maybe a rematch with Joel Romero. There's also, Gegard Mousasi out there. I don't know, Douglas Lima. There are some fun fights for him at 185 pounds or 205 in the Bellator banner. So I would like to see that happen. I would like to see him stick to MMA. I know he's done some grappling before in the past. That could be fun. Grappling is up and up, and it's hot right now. And I don't know, this might be a little bit of a curveball. I know PFL goes mentioned that he doesn't like that option, and I agree, as far as the season format, I don't think he's in to have 5 fights in a year or whatever for, given the mileage and his age. I don't think that's in him. But they are about to launch a pay-per-view format series.
Ooh.
That could be an option. I don't know. Maybe him fight Anderson Silva, former UFC middleweight champion, former UFC middleweight champion. Have him fight in a pay-per-view, not under the PFL season format. That could be interesting. So I wouldn't hate that. So I think either Bellator or pay-per-view series under PFL.
And I'll bounce off of what Danny's saying, because don't forget, Luke Rockhold flew to London to watch Michael Bisping fight Anderson Silva when he just won the title, thinking that Anderson Silva was going to walk through Michael Bisping and he was going to get that fight, and he never did. And Jake Paul is behind the whole PFL thing as well, the whole super fight thing. And Jake Paul fought Anderson Silva. They talked about a fighters union and whatnot. So yeah, that's another option.
Yeah, good stuff. All right. By the way, that sweater, Fedor, #1, right? His sweater is the #1 of all time, but I think Luke Rockhold, we got to give him #2. I forgot about that. UFC out in Salt Lake City was rocking it. All right, one more additional here. Sean O'Malley says the UFC, quote, needs a superstar right now, and he believes, quote, he could be that motherfucker. All right. Do you agree with Sugar? Goes?
Look, he's right. The UFC does need superstars right now. There's some cash cows that have left, and I don't know if the UFC has been really replacing them at the rate that they used to. Is he the one? I would probably say no. There's some top-tier talent ahead of him, but you also have to distinguish there's a difference between a star and a superstar. Sean O'Malley is a star right now, but he's not a superstar.
Okay, fair enough. How about you, Danny?
Yeah, I think Ghost put it on in perfect words. Right now, he's a star. He's definitely a draw, but he's not a superstar. But let's not forget, he's still very young into his career. And I do wonder what a belt could do to that star level. Could it take it to the superstar? Because we've seen, a lot of things change once you become the baddest dude in the division, once you have that gold around your waist. And he's not that far from it, keeping in mind, he's coming off that win over Peter Yan. So let's see how he evolves. If his skills take another improvement, another level up, which I think is definitely in the cards, and he does become champion, maybe he is a superstar. He does speak to a much younger audience, an audience that is growing. We obviously see even just Dana White's and the UFC's involvement with the Nelk boys and sort of that crowd. And we know that Sugar Sean O'Malley is boys with them and the Paul brothers. Yeah, there could be something there if he becomes champion, but I think that's very dependent on the belt. Right now, he's a star, a very popular figure, with the promise that it could be more, but that has to be done in the octagon in order to see if he can multiply that. So we'll see, but I think it's possible, yeah.
All right, how about you, Fada? Is he there yet?
Winning is everything, and I know he's coming off of a controversial win over Petr Yan, but he's #1 ranked bantamweight right now. If that will be forgotten if he can fight for a title and win that belt. So I think he definitely has the potential. I was very impressed with Sean O'Malley during that. I think people forget that he was inactive for a while because of the whole USADA thing. He did such a great job of marketing himself, and I think that's the time when he was really pushing to launch all his YouTube and social media stuff, the branding, the merchandise. I think he does a very good job of marketing himself. He does talk. He breaks down fights. He gives his opinion on a lot of things. He knows how to put himself out there, and he's not even a guy that will scream into the microphone and go crazy. He's a pretty mellow guy, but he has the look. He has the fighting style, and I think if he's supposed to be next in line, right? I don't know if he takes a fight or he just waits for the winner of the projected fight between Sterling and Cejudo. But if Sean O'Malley can go out there and win the title, people are going to forget about that close the close win over Petr Yan and the loss to Marlon Vera. And yeah, I think he has a lot of potential, especially considering that a lot of these stars that have come out in the UFC have been not Americans, people who have the backing of their entire country that fly over to them. Sean O'Malley doesn't exactly have that because obviously most fighters are from the US in the UFC. So the fact that he's been able to amass such a big following, and I saw in Abu Dhabi as well, I was surprised at how many fans he had, guys dyeing their hair to whatever color it was, pink or whatnot. He's got a lot of fans, so I think he definitely has the potential, and he's right there. He's about to fight for a title, so that could just skyrocket him even more. And we haven't even seen him headline a pay-per-view. We don't even know what kind of numbers he could do. So if he does become champion or even challenges for a belt, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a headliner. So we'll see.
Even Hasbulla asked him for a selfie So you know Sean O'Malley's pretty popular. But I think if he can knock off the champ, avenge Cheeto Vera, and then maybe one more, like either a Cruz or a Dillashaw, or maybe even the young gun like Corey Sandhagen. And I'm telling you, if we propose this question in early 2024, he might be the sport's biggest star. All right, folks, we got just a couple minutes here. Real quick, I'm going to just give you each some additional to reward the chat. Telvin Chiappa says, Luke Rockhold to AEW goes. You warm to that?
You know, he's got the type of personality that would flourish in something like that. I think he'd have a great time doing it, but I don't know. I mean, look at Valerie Laredo. Like, she didn't really take too much time. She's already on WWE. Yeah, I wouldn't hate it. I think he could possibly do something like that.
Danny West Coast says Jan won the belt and Izzy went up. You guys thought that was okay. I mean, I don't remember thinking that was okay, but he had some title defenses, right? That wasn't a horrible move, I think, for Izzy to move up. What do you think, Danny?
Yeah, he had some title defenses. Plus, the people that he had beaten. Remember, he also had an interim title fight that counts as like knocking out a contender too. No, it kind of seemed like the right move then. Again, he had some title defenses. I think it was like what, his third, or after his third, he did that.
Yeah, it was up there. I mean, he had a few before he did that, so I don't think it was that bad of a mood. Let me see here. Yes, your man. Yes, in the chat says Fedor, the best heavyweight of all time. That one's for your Fada. What do you think of that one? Is he right or?
I don't know. Maybe if he ends his career with the Bellator heavyweight title, that will definitely change a lot of things. He's definitely in discussion. It's just I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. That could change a lot. That's what I'm saying. Like, it could make people the reason why it would be so nice for Fedor as well. They'll make people revisit his history. So many new MMA fans who just have they know the name Fedor, but they have no clue about him just because obviously they've recently watched his sport. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, him becoming Bellator heavyweight champ could sway a lot of people from the likes of Miocic to Fedor.
Mm-hmm. I'll say it, heavyweight GOAT. I'll say it.
Yeah. Well, look in the conversation, Kane, but he kind of fizzled at the end. Verdum had beaten Kane and Fedor, but he kind of fizzled at the end. Stipe, 4 title defenses, but he hasn't been around. He took that loss versus Francis Ngannou. If he were to come back and get stamped again, you never know. But he's got 4 title defenses. Ngannou left, so no one's really like clear cut. Honestly, Fedor with a win over Bader. Fedor over Bader. He could be it, So that was a good question. That's a proper response there by Fada. West Coast, one more for you, man. You know what? I'll answer it. Jan had just won the belt. Yes, we know. Izzy was the one being rewarded, not Jan. The reward went to Izzy, so Izzy had defended the title, kind of cleared out the division, including 2-0 versus Whitaker. Who else are you going to give him? So that's why he was rewarded and went up. So there you go.
We're seeing the same thing right now with Islam and Volkanovski. Islam just won the belt, and
it's the reward for Volkanovski. Yeah, exactly. Right. Now Pereira would be wrong because he just won, so him moving up, we got to hit the brakes on that one. But that's a different West Coast. You're making us look bad, West Coast. We're going to send you to the East Coast. Represent, baby. All right, folks. Great stuff as always. I think you 3 are my favorite panel. Don't tell the others I said that. Of course, Cold Coffee. He's dying, but he did a great job. Future MMA award winner there. Goz and I will be hosting a watch along on February 11th. Tune in, watch the fights along with Goz and I here on MMA Junkie. And of course, we got it locked up here on MMA Junkie throughout the week. PFL, UFC, bare knuckle, Bellator, whatever you want to hear about, we got you covered. We'll see you next Monday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, for another edition of Spinning Back Clique. In the meantime, go out and be a champion.